The Gun Shop Show, the Gun Shop Show. What is it? We don't know. The Gun Shop Show, the Gun Shop Show. Here we go, it's the Gun Shop Show.
Welcome to the Gun Shop Show. I'm your host this week, Logan Jones. You're probably wondering,
Why?
why?
Why is it Logan Jones?
Where's Eli at? He's a much better host. I'll tell you where. On vacation. That's right. And that other voice you're hearing is our creative director. Is that your title?
Yeah, I think that's what they're calling
That
me
sounds
these
good
days.
enough. He kind of controls everything and makes sure this show is happening and it's possible.
Make it toit.
Mm-hmm.
Make it super toit.
His name is Trevor Smith.
Hello, everybody. I'm working on trying to get us some side-by-side shots right now, Logan, so that they can see our beautiful faces and, not my thinning hair and not subsequently, but also
Hey, man, it's okay.
complexion issues.
It's okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay.
We're going to get him nice
No
and
one cares about
close.
that.
Well, I do.
All they care about
I'm
is your
having to look
sultry
at it.
voice.
It is sultry.
I look
And
this way.
I've been-
Actually, it looks like I'm looking at you. That's cool.
Exactly. I have been doing sultry voice exercises. Been working on my radio voice.
Interesting.
Listen to that bass.
Ooh, I like that bass.
Yeah. So today's show is a bit of a somber topic,
It
as
is.
most folks already know.
It's going to be a very heavy show, and we want to warn you up front about that. It's going to be about the mass shootings that occurred in Atlanta and Boulder. I feel like it's a topic that we need to talk about.
Right.
We need to discuss.
Sometimes you have to do the things you don't want to do. It's just the responsibility of it's just the nature of being responsible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Muslim.
And no one ever wants to talk about these. No one ever wants to have to go through what happened, how we could have prevented it. It's something that people shouldn't have to deal with. No one
Right.
should. You shouldn't.
Absolutely.
You shouldn't have to live in fear that there could be an active shooter at any moment. And we really
Anywhere, literally anywhere.
anywhere. It's an issue that we need to confront head on and together. That's the main point, that we need to do it together. Otherwise, this merry-go-round is just going to keep on going.
Yep. So we have a few guests slated today.
Yes, we do.
We have Randy Miyan. All of these are folks that have been on the show before, so everybody should know them. But Randy Miyan is the executive director, I believe,
Yes.
of Liberal Gun Owners.
We'll have on Mike Sodini of Walk the Talk America.
Yes, which is a mental health organization that tries to work with the firearms industry and bring them together with the mental health community.
Yep.
And then we will have Rob Pincus on, who, while he is not technically a, what do you call that? A resident, I think, of Colorado. He does have a place there.
Yeah, and he spends considerable amount of time there.
Yeah,
or at least
yeah.
recently.
Even though his on paper residence is in Florida, he
yes.
spends a lot of time in
Yes.
Colorado. So he'll kind of give us a unique perspective of someone who is in an area. I think he's very close to Boulder.
Yeah.
So, he can tell us about the magazine laws that are in effect.
capacity laws.
Yeah,
and
just
whatnot
a
that
lot
are
of the stuff that
impacting
we hear
Colorado.
on TV and reading news articles. He'll give us a little more of a first person perspective.
As someone that lives in Missouri, we really have no idea.
Yeah.
We just focus on Missouri laws. But we wanted to kind of mix up the backgrounds of the guests so we get a kind of more full picture of how everyone feels about this. And
Certainly a well-rounded discussion. Now, we should let folks know that this is a topic that not really comfortable discussing, but still, you do the things that you don't want to do because it's important that you do them, and having that conversation. I know a lot of times, like on this show, that we try to have fun and we try to laugh, but we also can be serious when it's time to be serious, and now is one of those times when we're going to be serious.
I agree. And this is a topic that no one should take lightly. It's a very serious topic, and if I'm being honest, it makes me feel really uncomfortable. It makes me, I feel sick to my stomach. I feel angry. There's just so many emotions going on, and I'm sure that everyone else is feeling the same way. And talking about it helps us work through this and come to a more logical, kind of emotion-free, but not necessarily emotion-free solution that can help everyone involved.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's important that we continue to discuss things. But, mass shootings, unfortunately, aren't something that are really new to us here. And I'd like to think that, yes, very unfortunate. I'd like to think that at this point that it hasn't become just, humdrum. I'm turning a deaf ear to the sirens because they blare all the time. And so you don't take cover. So now, mass shootings have been going back. A little bit of my research here actually go back to the earliest known shooting happened on school property on July 26th of 1764.
Wow.
Isn't that nuts?
That is
a school shooting that goes back that far. I mean, there's several more of those, and I pulled that from a list of shootings that had occurred in the past. And, from, one... different reasons for why each one happened. I typically,
and while they have been more prevalent as of late, which is terrible and unfortunate, I think a lot of it is that we're getting significantly more exposure of these things.
I would agree with that. I think the news cycles
more aware. Yes,
I mean the 24-hour news cycle started. I want to say it was in 1980. If my memory serves correct, that's when CNN launched. It was a great year, by the way. And you know how I know that?
You were there?
Because I was born that year.
Oh, man.
Yep. So,
and a little younger.
As time has gone on, media has always been kind of in our faces, but ever more so as time has gone on. And, it's not even really news anymore. It's more opinion based. So anytime this stuff happens, you could turn on two channels and get two different opinions from, let me put my air quotes in here.
There we go.
From news sources, and
I like the air quotes.
Let's try to take opinion out of this and be somber for the right reasons and let those know that are hurting right now that
and
our
use
hearts are with
reason instead of emotion to decide laws and make laws and regulations.
Goes both ways.
But before we get into that, we need to talk about you guys, the viewers, and how you make this show possible, and also our sponsor, U.S. Law Shield, that makes this show possible. And Trevor, you said we had a video, kind of so they have basic, like it's kind of like a active shooter scenario and what you should do.
Yeah, U.S. Law Shield has a playlist of these. This is one that's called Basic Tactics.
Yep. And
we'll play this for you guys. Hopefully, you never have to present yourself in this situation, but
Absolutely.
if you do, here's some tips from our partners at U.S. Law Shield.
Here with a quick summary of what to do in an active shooter situation is Trent Lozano, a 15-year law enforcement veteran and former SWAT team member.
What I want to talk about tonight is some things that you can do, what your options are if you happen to be involved in an active shooter event. Now, the first thing that we can do, and it's going to sound overly simplified, but I assure you, nothing is simple when bullets are flying at you. So, the first thing that you can do is evacuate. Run. If you cannot escape, or you have some sort of limitation or barrier that keeps you from being able to escape, the next best option is to hide and barricade yourself in a position. Obviously, evacuation is preferred, but if you can't evacuate, then you want to hide and barricade. If hide and barricade didn't work and the shooter actually makes it back around to you, you're down to your last option now, and that is fight. Fight. Real world talk here. Are we really going to be able to save everyone? No, if there was a way that we could save everyone, we would have figured it out by now. Our goal has got to be to minimize the number of casualties, okay? One of the things that we can do will actually begin before an event even starts. So you go into this place, one of the first things that you can do is start looking around and seeing what is there, seeing what's available, seeing what's there, seeing what's not there. There's three main things that I recommend making special attention to. Pay attention to them especially. Number one, alternate exits. Always look for alternate exits. Everyone in there is going to know where the main entrance is because they all used it. And if an active shooter event occurs, they're all going to go right back out the same way they came in. It would be very beneficial for you to know where some other options are that maybe will have less competition to use them. The second thing is where are the restrooms located? And Do they have an external lock on them? Many current buildings or modern buildings will have an external lock on the main door to the restroom. If they don't have one, do they have a family restroom? A lot of times there will be a family restroom where you can actually go in and lock the door. That will come into play later. But you can actually fit quite a few people in there, lock the door, and still be able to deny access to a threat. The last thing that I recommend everybody look for is a fire extinguisher. Pay attention to where those are. That can come in real handy later, and I'm going to touch on that in just a little bit. But if you can at least know where those three things are, that will give you a little bit of an edge if worst case scenario actually occurs.
From Columbine to Sandy Hook, from Virginia Tech to the Navy shipyards, from Orlando to San Bernardino, the phrase.
There we go. Some great tips from our friends and our sponsors at U.S. Law Shield. I don't want to say now is a better time than ever, but you should have legal defense for your self-defense, and U.S. Law Shield is a great way to do that. They have several benefits: on-call attorney access, you have zero-fee legal defense, you have expert education. They're cheaper; it's cheaper monthly than the cost of Netflix. And when you sign up using promo code LibertyTree, all one word, you get 14 months for the price of 12 months. You get platinum protection, which locks in your rate for life. So as the economy shifts and prices and everything gets inflated, your rate will stay locked in at that starting rate. Up next, we have Randy Miyan of Liberal Gun Owners on. We're going to discuss the Boulder shooting, get his take on it as a liberal perspective, and we'll have many more guests coming forward. This is Logan, and stay tuned with us for the Gun Shop Show.
Hey podcast listeners and live stream viewers, I wanted to let you know that the Gun Shop Show is made possible by our friends at Mid-America RV. Being in the customer service industry, I have a really high standard for how customers are treated. Mid-America RV does it right. I've got my RV through their dealership and I've taken it all over the country. We made it to South Padre Island. We've gone to Colorado several times. And if you've ever owned an RV, you know there's a lot that comes with it. So who you get it from matters, and it's extremely important that you have support after the sale. They're located just outside of Carthage. They have a really vast inventory, and they are home of, I believe they call it a forever warranty. So I urge you, if you're in the market for one, to check them out. It's a really fun and can be very affordable way to get your trips in. So visit them at midamericarv.com. We appreciate their support of the Gun Shop Show. If you're in the market for a travel trailer or fifth wheel, check out Mid-America RV.
Our member's girlfriend is on her way to pick up her kids from her ex-husband's house. She asked our member to tag along because of her ex's temper. As they arrive at the home, her ex emerges yelling and gesturing. He approaches his ex-wife and grabs her, attempting to drag her inside. Fearing for her life, our member, a trained CHL holder, jumps out of the car with his gun drawn and demands the ex-husband release her. Seeing the gun, the assailant retreats. The situation then takes a bizarre turn as the assailant dials 911 to report our member. As a result of the aggressor's lies, our member was wrongfully arrested. Our member had to undergo lengthy legal proceedings. However, he was ultimately cleared of all charges.
Our evenings, or often on weekends, are spending Friday and Saturday nights on the deck with our friends. Before, everybody would be crowded. We could barely sit together. We were walking on top of each other if everybody was on the deck. Now there's plenty of room for everyone to roam around and relax comfortably and have plenty of space.
Specifically, I know that every post they bury to a certain depth with full concrete. They use 6x6 posts, strapping and hurricane strapping on everything. It's how I feel a deck should be built if it's going to be built right.
This just in. Huge cave found beneath the heart of the city. Spelunkers shared tales of an underground cavern system in Carthage, Missouri. Locals report the entrance to be at 10th and Garrison.
Cave Gang Pizza. Stop in and enjoy wings, wood-fire pizza made with local ingredients, and our full bar. Bring the whole gang and uncover a legend.
This is Russell. I gotta go. It's time for the Gun Shop Show.
Welcome back. This is the Gun Shop Show. Today's topic is going to be heavy, but I think it's one that we need to talk about. And we got Randy Miyan, the executive director of the Liberal Gun Owners, on to talk about it. Hey, Randy, how we doing?
We're doing good, Logan. How are you guys doing at the Gun Shop Show?
Busy. We're making it.
Always busy.
Mm-hmm. That's good. Anyway, Randy, we wanted you on to get kind of the perspective of a liberal gun owner when something tragic like this mass shooting in Boulder happened. Kind of see your thoughts, your feelings about it.
Okay. Well, first and foremost, what I think is important for me to say is that when these things happen, I get very angry. So when we started Liberal Gun Owners as an organization, it was in February of 2017, and I don't know if you guys remember this or not, but that February, March, April, there were a number of school shootings.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong. Wasn't the Vegas shooting in 2017 as well?
Yes, there was Parkland there. So I started off. One of the first things that we did was we were going to start with a study of school shootings, and so I had a notebook, and I wrote some of the most prominent school shootings on the front of that notebook. It's a research notebook. And we incorporated somewhere in February of that year. And as the next couple months went on, I was just adding more and more names to the front of that notebook, right? So when any mass shooting happens, the first response, I'm trying to say that when I've been doing this for a few years now, and it's not sadness that hits me at this point, and it's anger is really what it is. I get very angry. And I don't just get angry when mass shootings happen. I get angry when I get exposed to data and information about shootings in communities of color. I get angry whenever I see situations with domestic violence. I get angry with a lot of this stuff. So I think it's important for people to understand, coming from inside of the gun world, there's, I think, outsiders, people who don't own guns, might hear gun organizations or gun people react to these kinds of events, and they only hear somebody who's trying to fight for their gun rights right after these events happen. And that's not what is happening inside of Liberal Gun Owners or inside of myself as the executive director. The first thing that happens is that I have emotional responses to these things. I get very, very upset. And my first move is not, oh, my guns, I'm worried about my gun rights. My first move, and the first move of Liberal Gun Owners, the organization, is to move towards thinking about how you mitigate these issues and how you prevent them from happening or stop them from happening. So our first move is not, oh, don't just keep your hands off my guns. Like, we'll deal with that. But the first move is actually, these are people that are dying. We're Americans. This is happening inside of America. And so we have care and concern for the phenomenon, and we want to try to mitigate or stop the phenomenon. That's our first response.
Right, which is, it's a healthy, natural response to be angry at these things, because these are the acts of evil people, and they affect us in ways that, you can't, it's getting to the point to where you go out. At least in myself, I go to the mall not very often, or I go to the grocery store, and you hear these events happen, and they play in your mind a little bit like, am I going to have to deal with this thing? It's not normalized to the point to where it doesn't cross my mind, because it does cross my mind anytime I go somewhere. And, it makes me angry as well, because now, I'm fearing for my safety and the safety of the people that I care about, and, people that I don't even know, my fellow citizens. I concern myself with that as well.
Yes, we're always working on, we're a mechanism for the balance between the full support of firearms ownership rights and the full support of public safety. So it's like a balance, a teetering mechanism, right? Where you're considering everything that we can think about in terms of making this a better situation. Can you even make it a better situation? There's the determination is you cannot stop all of these events.
Right.
Boulder, Atlanta, you can't stop all of them, but we can do something to mitigate them. And the question
minimize
is,
them.
what can you do? Right. And anyone who's out in the public sphere who's speaking like this is a simple issue or they have the answer, well, either they're lying, whether they're doing it on purpose or not is another issue. Right. Anyone who believes they have the answer, they don't. This is a complex issue. There's
Very
no
complex.
simple path to it. So you have to sort of balance out when you're a gun owner. You're holding your gun ownership rights in one hand, and you're supposed to be, at least in my opinion, holding this care and concern for what's happening in our society in the other.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the reasons that people choose to, after these tragedies occur, people choose to cling to, they're trying to take away my gun rights, is because certain people in the media immediately go to, we need more gun control, we need to regulate this, we need to get this under control. And while I understand why your concerns lie with, I need to keep my guns and keep my gun rights, there's something more important in play, and that's the lives of people that we're losing left and right, that we need to find a way to either stop entirely or reduce.
Yes.
It just doesn't seem as though... Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say the notion that you can't have a hard line with your belief in your rights, your gun rights, you can't have a hard line and a soft heart. The notion that you have to choose one or the other, it's baloney. You can have a strong philosophical line and also care about the situation. I think that within the gun reality, compassion is an issue. Gun owners on the whole, to me, in my 10 years in the situation, don't tend to be compassionate first. They seem to be more principled first, right? So, but I think it's important and I've seen this it doesn't matter, it's liberals, it's conservatives, it's independents, that many gun owners do have a major concern for this. They do have a lot of heart about this. But you can stand on your own 2 feet about your rights. There's plenty of other things that you can do to help out the situation other than perhaps contributing to this unending stream of regulation that the Democrats and progressives want to lay on the situation.
Right. I know what you're talking about with regard to people reacting, fearing their principles are being attacked over compassion. It could be possible that reaction is as a result of compassion as well. Like they care about their safety. They care about the safety of those around them. Therefore, fearing that gun laws will restrict that may be a way, their reaction is based on the fact that, could be based on the fact that they don't want to have to concern themselves with that.
I mean, and it makes sense if you're not part of the gun world to think another mass shooting just happened. Why are we letting this happen? If you have a mass shooting without guns, guess what? There's no mass shooting, and we can do something about this. Let's do something about this. But the issue is so much more complex and nuanced that just regulating guns is not going to fix it. It's not a gun control problem. It's a people problem. It's a violence issue. It's something that we need to find the source of, if possible, and try to rectify it there, and not just frantically try to
grasping at straws and making our lives less free. Yes, well, we're about 20 seconds out from the end of the second segment here, Randy. But if you can hang on for one more segment, we'd love to have you.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Excellent, man. All right. Well, Logan?
We're coming up on a break. We will be right back on The Gun Shop Show.
Hey everyone, The Gun Shop Show is brought to you by Carthage Lock and Key. If you need anything to do with a lock or a key...
To success!
Did they tell you to say that?
No, I just thought it sounded good.
They have a mobile service, so they can come to you and cut pretty much any kind of key.
To success!
Or if you lock your keys in your car...
To success!
I'm talking even security modern chip keys.
To success!
Trevor, could you just jingle the name of the business?
Okay. Yeah, I'll do it good this time.
So, with all of my properties and all of the needs I have, I trust
Carthage Lock and Key to success!
My name is Chris Anderson. I'm a captain with the San Antonio Police Department. I've been with my agency 27 years. My whole career in law enforcement has been spent with the San Antonio Police Department. I started off as a patrol officer like all others do, patrolling the streets of San Antonio. About 3 years after I was on the department, I made the SWAT team, and I stayed in tactical special operations by virtue of SWAT, the gang units, street crime arrest teams, tactical response units, all types of things in that particular forte until I started to make rank. And I've been a captain for 11 years now, and I've been involved in everything from Homeland Security to patrol operations to the night commander's job, special operations, and now I'm the commander of the Special Investigations Unit. Police officer's job at the scene of a crime is simply to protect the people who are there, prevent further injury or death, preserve physical and testimonial evidence, collect it, and deliver it for processing in a criminal case. We do not determine guilt or innocence at a scene, and it's an important role in our job to remain as neutral and unattached from feelings of guilt or innocence as we can. About 90% of the people that we interact with on the streets at any given time are good, solid citizens who are trying to abide by all the laws that they know. Typically, when they interact with a police officer, it's because they violated something in the things that they don't know. And the Texas Penal Code book and Code of Criminal Procedures, local government laws, family codes, and a variety of other things are in a book that's about 8 inches thick. Most police officers don't know most of the information in it, and naturally that would tend to lead you to understand that most citizens definitely wouldn't know them all. So most of the interactions that police officers in Texas have with normal citizens is involving a law that those folks don't even know exists. Many times, and especially depending upon the level of experience that they have with the job, the speed by which they determine who's an actual suspect and who just may be a person of interest as a witness or possibly a victim is hard to determine initially. Factors that they're aware of at the scene, it all depends on those things to determine whether someone's telling the truth or not. There are obvious cases when someone's trying to deceive us, and there are people who are very good at deceiving the police. At that point, we may take a lot of people into what we term an investigative custody, or make an investigative detention on them for the purpose of determining who the actual suspects, victims, and witnesses might be. And our goal at that time is to legally arrest and take into custody the persons responsible for the crime.
Hey everybody, Eli here, and I'm really excited to tell you that the Gun Shop Show is brought to you by one of my favorite places on earth. Located here in my hometown of Carthage on the beautiful historic square, the Emporium on the square, and the Woodshed. It's a art gallery, an event center, a gift shop. They have art classes, and there's very unique Americana artwork from famous artists like Andy Thomas. They handle a lot of his original framing. Just has this incredible old school vibe, and you can feel the history coming through. Have to check out the art gallery, but then as you work your way to the back, my favorite part, the Woodshed, had a lot of great meals in here. They've got burgers. I love their catfish. Excellent. Chicken and waffles even. It's incredible. And it's also a music venue, so we got to see my favorite band of all time, the Ben Miller Band. Ceiling was literally raining down. They were rocking so hard. But the best thing, owned by one of my favorite people on earth, that's Cherry Babcock. Check out the Emporium on the Square and the Woodshed.
Hey there. We got your lab results back. It looks like you have a fever, and the only prescription is more Gun Shop Show.
Welcome back to the Gun Shop Show. In the last segment, we were talking about the unfortunate and tragic mass shooting in Boulder. But Randy, I wanted to get your opinion on how you think we can maybe mitigate or reduce these mass shootings going forward, and what steps we can take as individual gun owners to make this possible.
That's a good question. First and foremost, I just do not have the answers, all of the answers, right? I have ideas, and I've been exposed to subject matter experts, and we've reached out to subject matter experts over the last 4 years. Mm-hmm. So I just have ideas, and as I said before, I don't want to ever come off as somebody who believes he has all of the answers, because this is a complex scenario. These are complex issues, and we have too many people out in the space trying to represent solutions with these single agent ideas. Whenever we're in a reality where this at the very minimum takes comprehensive approaches. So you can't just address it with regulations, and you can't just address it with community activity, right? You have to combine everything. So these are very special events. They're almost like, even though there's a lot of them happening, in terms of preventing them, they're very needle in the haystack.
Right.
So the one thing that we've learned through student threat assessment and stopping school shootings and studying that phenomenon is that these individuals typically leave like Easter eggs, breadcrumbs. They do what's called leaking. Right? They will leak out what they're going to do because part of the whole event is some sort of an ego satisfaction or vengeance for them in one way or another. So they want to advertise it just a little bit. You would have to start off any effective system with a nationwide education approach for people to understand leaking and what to look for, right? Not being paranoid, not surveillance state, but you would have to have a populace that was willing to understand this phenomenon and look for the warning signs. And so that's probably the best place to start. But the problem is we have a populace that's probably not interested in doing that.
Especially not getting government involved. Right. Yeah.
Right.
Having government monitor that, they don't, folks don't really want that. I mean, not even social media itself. Like, we want to hold them to this higher standard of, policing without policing. We don't want people to say hateful things, or, even if you went on social media and you were saying something to the effect like, I'm going to go shoot this place up. And then, someone calls the cops and they come to your house and you're like, I'm just playing, versus it really happening. Are we going to hold Facebook accountable for policing people? Do we want them to? I mean, there's been a lot of backlash with regards to, people being banned on Twitter, especially with the mindset being that most of these folks are conservative.
And I think in terms of leaking, I think the idea is sound, but I think the biggest fear that would come of that is that while if people do this, I would be afraid myself that at some point this would turn into some kind of Minority Report scenario where we are criminalizing people that haven't committed crimes.
I mean, go ahead. Sorry.
You would have to have training. People would have to have training so that they don't overreact. I think one of the points that I want to make is that we're not entirely against the use of regulation in a comprehensive system. We just have a hard line with how much regulation gets used.
Right.
We accept the background check. We acknowledge the background check as a foundational part of gun ownership in America. It's not ever going to go away. So we embrace that. We don't embrace all of this really heavy top-down regulatory approach stuff. We don't think that it has been proven to be effective with things like this. And if you follow along with where it goes to get a maximum effect out of, let's say, where the Democrats want to go, you have to just keep pouring into that over and over and over again to try to wring the water out of that sponge to get more effect. So we have an understanding. We're not trying to protect our guns. We have an understanding of the actual effectiveness of what law does on human behavior. And I think that's another piece for education, is that we're not against regulation. It's just laws are terrible preventatives.
Yeah.
They're terrible deterrents. And they only have an effect that might be useful in certain circumstances. So at the very minimum, the approach needs to be tailored towards what you're dealing with, if you're dealing with regulation whatsoever. I think the other thing that needs to be mentioned is that there's too much in the gun world. The world is crazy. It's not our problem. It's not my problem. These are my rights. If you keep following down that road and we keep having this phenomenon happen in society, and we will, we're 20 years into it now.
Yeah.
It just keeps happening over and over and over again. If you have a gun culture that's like, that's not my problem, these are my rights, those crazy people aren't my problem, that's leading to a bad place.
Absolutely.
So we have to be more aware of it and socially conscious as a community. But just because you choose to be more socially conscious or conscientious doesn't mean that you are embracing an assault weapons ban, right? You can be against the assault weapons ban and embrace some kind of a sensibility that cares about these things and wants to reduce it.
Right, which
reduce
I mean,
the occurrences, yeah.
certainly is, you know, a mindset that I have. Like I'm not for more law, I'm not for more regulation, but also we can't just ignore this problem and it go away. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah. Yes. So I wanted to mention too. I did have this here. People can go onto YouTube and search out the word live : Senate Judiciary Committee holds hearing on reducing gun violence. So this just happened. And you're going to get to see there an array of people that are making testimonies who are either saying, let's full court press on regulation, or you're hearing people that are saying you have to tailor regulation. Now, this hearing, you don't hear anybody in there that's saying no regulation, because that's not useful for politicians and lawmakers. They're not interested in that. So you're not going to find that philosophical bent in there. But what you are going to see is the reality that's happening in the government, right? They have considerations on whether they want to do something or whether they don't want to do something, and you pretty much have a bipartisan support of doing something. So those of us that are into guns, we can't just say, I'm not. It's about my principles. All that law stuff is BS. A great portion of this country is going to do something. So you also need to have some kind of a strategy to be involved in that doing something, to try to guide the process so that it's not horrible, right? So that it's not horrible for the Second Amendment, so that people are trying to focus on things that actually might be helpful. You can stay outside of that all you want, but it's still going to happen. So if you have a philosophical bent and a philosophical strategy, that's good that you have that. But you should also be aware that the rest of our society isn't just going to do that. So we need to work on influencing what's happening as well.
Right. Now, does the Liberal Gun Owners Organization, do they advocate to any member of our government on behalf of gun rights?
We're trying to, we can't be everything to everyone and all things. So we're working on more foundational stuff with ourselves and keeping stable. I think eventually we will do something like that, but there's nothing that we could have gone to that judicial hearing, and there's nothing that we could have said that wasn't said. Like Chris Chang was there. If you have an opportunity to go to and look at that video and see what Chris Chang said, he's one of the first speakers. He only speaks for about 5 minutes. There's nothing that we could have done or said that Chris Chang didn't say. So it's being represented, I think, well, where we kind of land in the ballpark. But right now, we just don't have the resources for that. I think eventually you will see more of that coming from the liberal gun owning
as the
reality.
community grows, it definitely will, become more active in government. Well, Randy, we have about 50 seconds left. Is there anything that you'd like to let our viewers know, where they can find you, how they can follow you?
You can always find us at liberalgunowners.org. You can find us on Twitter at libgunowners. You can find us on Instagram, Liberal Gun Owners, one word. Our Facebook group is going to be facebook.com/groups/Liberal Gun Owners. And
Excellent,
Gmail is liberalgunowners@gmail.com.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Randy. Maybe next time we can talk about something a little more lighthearted, like what kind of guns you have.
Yeah, that would be cool.
One of these days we'll do that.
Thank you so much.
Gun Shop Show.
Thank you, guys.
Land is everything to me. When I was born, I was brought home to the family farm, was raised, learned work ethic there, learned appreciation and respect for life and the land itself, and it just became second nature. I had to be there all the time. Whenever I wasn't on the land, I was not happy. But I learned to understand the land, learned to respect it, learned family values. My wife and I have bought a farm besides the one we live on, and it has just been a great investment, and it's been someplace that my son and I have shared the passion of hunting together, and land has been everything in my life. It has kind of kept me focused and gave me a place to be just kind of kept me grounded.
Hey, you know what makes this, the Gun Shop Show, possible? It's people who believe in the show. And someone who has believed in the show from the very beginning is my good friend Chris Chapman, owner of Whitehead Farm Supply. Here's a message from Chris.
Guys, my name's Chris Chapman, owner of Whitehead Farm Supply, and I just want to take a few seconds here to let you know that we are going to be proud sponsors of the Gun Shop Show, and we appreciate everything that them guys are doing over there, and we just want to show them our support. Thank you.
So whether you have 2 chickens or 2,000 acres, Chris is your man. Give him a call. I guess that's pretty much the ad.
Whitehead Farm Supply.
Seriously?
Always.
Listen here, Pilgrim. This here is the Gun Shop Show.
Welcome back to the Gun Shop Show. We just got done talking with Randy Miyan of Liberty Tree Liberal Gun Owners, and up next we have Mike Sodini on. He's the founder of Walk the Talk America. Mike, how we doing?
Doing good. I'm glad to be here. I wish it was under different circumstances, but we don't choose these things when they happen. So
that is correct. Yes. I mean, maybe in the future we'll have a little more lighthearted interaction, but at this point we're talking about not just the Boulder shooting. I mean, that's specific to this instance, but the Atlanta shooting. Saw an article today that said there was a young man that walked into, I want to say it was another grocery store in Atlanta with 5 or 6 firearms on him, and not a good time. Even if you're just trying to I guess flex your Second Amendment right, not a good time, because the reaction was danger and the cops were called.
Absolutely.
But you know, Mike, you're a Las Vegas native, right? Or you live in Vegas?
Mm-hmm. I live in Vegas, yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, stuff like this definitely hits home for you. Were you present in Vegas during the 2017 shooting?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I had just left the T-Mobile Arena. I went to a hockey game, I believe it was, or a concert with my daughters, and I remember driving past Mandalay Bay, and I was like, "Why is there so many people out here?" And this is about 30 minutes before it started, so I was able to get home. I was nowhere near it when it happened, but I remember like someone said, "Oh, it's a country western concert," and then it was like a movie for me, sitting at home and kind of watching it all unravel.
Essentially, right outside your doorstep.
Yeah. And at first we didn't know, because there was so much bad information being passed. And I wouldn't say bad, right? But people were saying that there was multiple shooters. They were in casinos, because what was happening is people had blood on their clothes and they were running into casinos. And, it was just chaos and frantic.
Yeah.
And
worst time to try to figure out what's happening is like right as it's happening. I mean, a lot more confusing information. So, as Logan mentioned, that you're the founder of Walk the Talk America, which would you mind explaining to our audience exactly what your organization is?
Yeah, no problem. We are from the firearms industry, and what we do is look for innovative ways to work with the mental health community to get people the help they need when they're in crisis or before they're in crisis, without fear of restriction or anything like that would prohibit it. So we say, look, there's some non-starters, but there are some things that we can do to help connect people. So we work with the mental health clinicians, we work with gun shops, we work with gun manufacturers to look for some out of the box different ways, instead of standing on 2 separate sides of the room and playing the blame game.
Right. Yeah, because that pointing fingers solves no problems at all. A conversation does.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, right now, this is when this work has been the most valuable, because I've spent the last 2 days speaking with people from Mental Health America, people from NAMI, people from all these different walks of life, and going over what the issues really are, and what laws could have eventually, prevented this.
Right.
But there isn't, right? And this is where these conversations are important because people are calling me and saying, Mike, I don't understand right now. And I know they're emotional. I don't understand. Make this make sense for me. And we can have a reasonable conversation where I can tell them where some of the issues are. And we can, very nuanced conversations where we can kind of look to see what could have been done, if anything.
Yeah.
And in the case of the Boulder shooting, Mike, do you believe this was a mental health issue? And is it as simple as that?
I don't want to default, and obviously we don't want to stigmatize mental health, and that's one of the main things because mental health has 200 different categories. Everything from fear of spiders, is considered a mental health issue, to substance abuse, all the way to paranoid schizophrenia, which, from what I've been reading, looks like this might have been a situation where this gentleman might have been, struggling with that. But I have a sneaking suspicion that his paranoia got the best of him, and this is why he did this. Until they come out with any more information from digging into his background. I mean, that's what I have to assume. When you feel like you're being followed and you're paranoid, that tends to look like paranoid schizophrenia.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, you're a danger to not only yourself and others, especially if you're, carrying and fearing for your life, whether or not the thing that's chasing you is a figment or real, for that matter. I mean, it's hard to fathom what this gentleman was thinking. I mean, I would say anybody who does any of this stuff has mental health issues. The question is if it is, how do we solve this without involving government? How do we approach this in a way to keep government out of it so that we, law-abiding citizens, don't have to be affected or lose our rights?
Yeah, well, there's really no easy answer for that. Right. I wish I knew that.
Yeah, I mean,
that's what I'm working. That's what I've been working on for the last 3 years, right? I want to tell a quick story, so people can understand. When I first got into this work, the idea was to just hand money to the mental health community, have it come from the firearms community, but work on the things, the outreach and things like that, that would potentially stop mass shooters. And I really thought, okay, this is a great opportunity for the firearms industry to look like heroes because we're helping them, because the mental health side of things, they always talked about the budgets being cut. Wanted to stop the mass shootings. I was pushed back into suicide prevention, mainly from everybody that I was able to sit down with in the mental health community, some of the leaders in that community, because they told me stopping the next mass shooter, no matter how much money you throw at it, is like finding a needle in a haystack, right? And what I want to tell people is the best future predictor of violence is previous violence, not mental health diagnosis. So take this gentleman from Boulder. There could be 10 of him just like that outside the door. We could hand them firearms and he'll never do anything his entire life with that firearm to hurt himself or anybody else. Then you get that one, right? And that's why this is such a, this has to be a nuanced conversation when we talk about these things.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think it's important when anything like this happens that we, at first, instead of our knee-jerk reaction to get emotional and say, this is how we fix it immediately, or this is how we fix it, that we take a step back, we take in all the information that we can, and we try to develop a plan based off of that instead of relying on our emotions, which, while deserved, we need to put those aside and think of this logically and how we can prevent this moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, after mentioning 9/11 here, but give the whole Patriot Law thing, or Patriot Act, sorry, people were so riding high on emotion that they were okay with the Patriot Act and things like that, rather than looking at it from a logic. I mean, we went into 2 wars that were with countries that had nothing to do with those sorts of things. So emotions can make us make bad decisions. So it's important that we take a deep breath and talk and figure out what's going on. And I mean, it doesn't just apply to firearms and crime that exists as a result.
It's every walks of life.
Yeah, it's anything. You don't react out of emotion. React out of
like facts, science, data.
Yeah, data.
Trying to use logic. Right. Yeah. And that's why it's important to develop. When I get a lot of heat from some staunch 2A supporters that are like, why are you talking to the other side? Right. And then they have this passion, and I get where they're coming from. But this is a perfect example of why it's important. I spent hours yesterday talking to people that were in that emotional state that are from that side, and having come to certain conclusions where we discuss things and saying like, look, this is the non-starter stuff. This is why this will happen again if you ban that. Right. This is how many people that rifle actually kills a year, right? It's the perspective that they're going to miss if we don't develop relationships with the so-called other side, to have these calm conversations, meeting them where they're at. Look, I'm just as upset as you, like that's important that they know that. So, there's no easy answer for it, but I believe casting a wide net while you're working on suicide prevention is the most important thing. We might not be able to find the next mass shooter, but maybe we can get him help or her help, whoever that is, right? Early on in the game, if they feel like they could come forward without any consequence to get the help they need to get that temporary crisis taken care of before it becomes stage 4.
Right. And it's difficult to put into, to make tangible or put into numbers how much violence is subverted as a result of the efforts of the mental health community, because those acts never occurred. Like you have this act occurs and it's like, look, see, this isn't working, so we need more laws. So it's very difficult to do that. You can't really suppress the acts of random people all the time. All you can do is try to minimize it as much as possible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
I probably got to come up on a break, right?
Yeah, we're about there. About a minute now.
Okay, I was just going to say that's the hardest part, is when people try to rely just on data, right? Data isn't always the end all be all, especially when people want to be anonymous. I always tell people all the time, don't just let data get in the way of getting somebody help or saving a life, because you need to collect that data,
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Mike, hopefully you can hang out with us for another segment.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
Yeah, we're coming up on the end of the first hour. So if you're on TV, you're going to want to go to Facebook, libertytreeguns.com. Go over there, search us up, find us. We'll be live here. You can watch us that way. Just stay with us. We're going to talk to Mike one more time on next segment. This is The Gun Shop Show.
Hey, podcast listeners and live stream viewers. I wanted to let you know that the Gun Shop Show is made possible by our friends at Mid-America RV. Being in the customer service industry, I have a really high standard for how customers are treated. Mid-America RV does it right. I've got my RV through their dealership, and I've taken it all over the country. We made it to South Padre Island. We've gone to Colorado several times. And if you've ever owned an RV, you know there's a lot that comes with it. So who you get it from matters, and it's extremely important that you have support after the sale. They're located just outside of Carthage. They have a really vast inventory, and they are home of, I believe they call it a forever warranty. So I urge you, if you're in the market for one, to check them out. It's a really fun and can be very affordable way to get your trips in. So visit them at midamericarv.com. We appreciate their support of the Gun Shop Show. If you're in the market for a travel trailer or fifth wheel, check out Mid-America RV.
Hey members, thank you again for joining us today. I have spent a lot of time talking to several of our independent program attorneys who have all given me the same great practical advice on what to do if you ever have to display or use your firearm to stop a threat. Always make sure you call 911 to report that you were almost a victim of a crime. Why? Because if you don't, there is a very high likelihood that the bad guy will call 911 and report you as the criminal. This exact scenario is illustrated by the story of Scott, one of our members from Colorado. This is what happened. Scott was exiting the supermarket when he was verbally assaulted by two individuals who were looking for an altercation. The verbal assault became so heated that our member was afraid for his life. Scott was forced to defuse this potential deadly threat by displaying his firearm and demanding to be left alone. Being the cowards that they were, the bad guys backed away. Our member, however, made a critical mistake, thinking the situation was over, and drove off. It was only a few blocks away. Scott was pulled over, handcuffed, and taken into custody. How in the world did this happen? Well, the answer is simple. The bad guys called 911 first and reported Scott as the aggressor. The lesson here is criminals lie. Scott was the victim of the crime and was charged with disorderly conduct, and only after a lengthy legal process, all charges were dismissed. Since Scott is a member of U.S. Law Shield, he ended up paying 0 attorney's fees. Unfortunately, this ordeal still disrupted his life. Members, please do not let this happen to you. Thank you, Scott, for sharing your story with us. Members, if you have a great story relating to owning a firearm or how your U.S. Law Shield membership has benefited you, we want to hear about it. Share your story at memberstories@uslawshield.com, and maybe we will include it in our next newsletter.
People are always asking me, Eli, you seem to get the best deals on things. What is your secret?
Glory actions and estate sales.
Trevor, I appreciate you jingling, but I have to say the ad part first because people need to know about the company.
Oh, I thought you wanted me to do it.
And then also, it's covering up my face. So
I'll
just get a picture like from their Facebook page because that's the best place, and then just put it right up here where the Gun Shop Show logo is. Okay.
Yeah. All right, I'll do better this
time. And so let me finish the ad, and then you can jingle. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So the best place to go is their Facebook page.
Oh, glory actions and estate sales.
You know what? Fine. I'll just move in between the graphics and finish telling people that the best place to find out when
Old Glory actions and estate sales. I think I got it that time, man.
Our member is involved in a brief road rage incident. One driver cuts off another in traffic, and harsh words and gestures soon follow. After the pleasantries are exchanged, our driver goes on his way, assuming the incident is over. However, still agitated, the other driver calls 911 and reports our member as aggressive, possibly having seen a weapon in his hand. In reality, what he saw was our member flipping him the bird. In an incident that can only be described as an overreaction by officers, our member is pulled over. When officers learn that he carries a legal concealed firearm, they arrest him despite a lack of evidence. This incident is just one of numerous member experiences. Be aware when traveling with a firearm. Any aggressive actions made by you, right or wrong, can land you in jail. Don't let it happen to you.
Buckle up, because belts just got better. With Core Essentials, the perfect fit every time. With 40-plus sizing positions. Styles for any situation. Whether in the boardroom, crushing sales and taking names, on your next adventure, in the great outdoors, or when you're done for the day and ready to relax. Get your perfect fit with Core Essentials.
In order to sponsor the Gun Shop Show, send us an email at thegunshopshow@gmail.com.
Hey all, it's Mel with Pro Outfitters. Once again, I'm on the go, but I always make time for the Gun Shop Show.
The Gun Shop Show, the Gun Shop Show. What is it? We don't know. The Gun Shop Show, the Gun Shop Show. Here we go, it's the Gun Shop Show.
Welcome back. It's the Gun Shop Show. We're talking to Mike Sodini from Walk the Talk America. And during the break, Trevor and I were talking about a quote on Mike Sodini's webpage. Trevor, do you want to talk about that?
Absolutely. Let me read this for folks. This is Mike Sodini's quote. Do not confuse evil with mental illness. Do not confuse someone who does something evil while carrying a firearm with a law-abiding member of the 2A community. At some point, we have to get off this merry-go-round of madness. There's nothing more I'd like to see than the firearm industry get to where alcohol is with DUIs. But I feel we are trying to outdo the tobacco industry. If you don't understand what I'm trying to say here, do some research. Mike, what are you trying to say here?
I'm trying to say that there is a valuable space that we can give to the rest of the country when it comes to providing programs and access for people who need help when they're in crisis, right? The perception of the firearms industry is that we don't do anything. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, like there's a lot of people right now that are going to say we're cheering right now because we're excited because guns are going to go through, sales are going to go through the roof, and we both know that's just not true. But what I want the firearms industry to do is really take charge of what we can offer. We can't offer restriction, right? We can't offer legislation. Those are non-starters for us, and we all know why. But what we can do is use our space, like our card in the box, the card we have at the firearm shop, that maybe could catch some of these people early on in the net, where they can go and get the help that they need to get their mind right. And that's where I want to go. I'm tired of the firearms industry being the villain in everybody's movie. I want to get to where DUIs are. Nobody blames Johnny Walker when some idiot gets behind the wheel of a car and takes out a family that's just trying to go home.
Right.
And that's what I'm saying. That's where I want to go.
Right. And I kind of had a feeling that's where you were getting at with that. It's, everybody's looking for someone to pin the responsibility on, and gun manufacturers are basically sitting ducks with regards to this thing. So let's go after them rather than trying to deal with the root of the issue.
Right. And if we can get on the same page and we can start being proactive and getting to the places that we know these people are going to go, when these tragedies strike, it's a great thing when you have the conversation. These are the things that we're doing, and none of this involves restriction or legislation. We have 14 firearms manufacturers that are putting the free and anonymous mental health screenings in the box. We should have everybody doing that, right? We should, because it really doesn't take much for us to just add that card in there.
Right.
And we're getting better at this, but we got to do it ourselves because nobody else knows us. They're going to just tell us what to do.
Right. And the folks that are, that want legislation or want restriction on folks who are, into guns or who sell guns, they're operating on information that has not a lot of basis. I've seen some of these politicians, and to be fair, I see it from both sides with regards to certain topics. I've seen politicians talk about tech like they're the insiders and they don't know anything. It's the same thing with the gun industry. I mean, you've got some politician talking about, guns in such a way that the people who are pro-gun are rolling their eyes like these guys are idiots, and the people that are anti-gun are, feeling like they're getting all the details, all the information, and it's just not true. The statistics on gun deaths alone are a prime example of that. In one case they're used including suicides, and in other cases it's not including those to try to make points.
Yeah.
As opposed to the reality of the situation. I'd love to see people be talking about these sorts of things in politics and actually have some basis of information as opposed to just using emotion.
Well, the problem is by the time the politicians start talking about it, they're already in that heated debate and conversation.
And it's too late.
Yeah, what I've been trying to do for the last 3 years, or what I have been doing, as I mentioned in the last segment, is that immediately my phone started ringing off the hook from mental health professionals that were emotionally in a bad space from this, like we all are. And they were just like, please explain it to me again. And I'm a big fan of Denzel in the movie Philadelphia, right? Explain it to me like I'm a 5-year-old, or whatever the quote was. Because I believe that sometimes when you're not into something, you need that explained to you again in a calm manner. Yeah, and that's why I'm so proud. If anything, and we're never going to get credit for this, and I'm not looking for it, but I'm so proud of these relationships that I've made in the last 3 years, because I literally have some heavy hitters that reached out for that information and made them take a breath. Like, hey, okay, pause. I see what you're saying. You know, most people don't even know what an AR pistol is, right? And that's what one of them used yesterday. That's not even an AR for for them. I had to kind of break it down of what that is and why mass shootings will continue to happen regardless of that, if that's gone or not.
Right. Well, I mean, it won't be shootings. It'll be something else. If the criminal can't get his hands on the guns, he'll use something else. Yeah. It's just right now, that's probably a little easier for him. So that's what they're using. But you take that away.
Isn't that always a real... I have a question for you guys. Isn't that always funny? When I say, like, what if the guy got paranoid and he took his car and he just ran over a bunch of people in the parking lot, right? It almost feels like sometimes people, I always ask, what's your death threshold?
Right. Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I've heard I'm entering the car versus gun debate here. Folks think, well, you have to have a license to drive a car, so you should have a license to own a gun, as if there's some parallel in that instance of it. But you're right. Like, criminals, I mean, we say it around here. So criminal's going to be criminal, and they're going to do the bad thing regardless of what the tool is. It's just, this is the tool that they're choosing, and it's causing a lot of issue in a community that is overwhelmingly law-abiding. Overwhelmingly.
Right.
It's not even...
Most of us have CCWs, right? We do have a license to carry.
Right. Right.
And that's where it becomes that's where it's like, I know we're on a show about, the gun shop show, and most of our listeners here are probably the same as us. Like, I do have a license to carry my gun.
Right.
I've gone through that process. The problem is that when these moments of crisis happen to people, it doesn't matter that you have a license for your car, or you learned how to fly a plane.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's a scary reality. Nobody wants to go to root cause mitigation, because finding out what really is the issues, or trying to catch them early, get upstream to prevent the unpredictable, takes a ton of work, a lot of money, and it's easier to just default to restriction or banning, because that's a lazy way out of it.
Right.
That's not going to change it.
No, it's not.
That's the easy way out of it, and it's easy to sit back and blame guns and say they're the issue. But if we ban guns, and then like knifing is on the rise, or just beating someone to death or whatnot, are we going to start banning that? There's no way. We need to get to the root of the problem, which happens to be we have a problem with violence in this country.
It's not just this country. It's a human condition.
It is, and it always has been for hundreds and hundreds of thousands of years.
Dawn of man. I mean, it's not even, depends on how you feel, but it extends outside of our own species. But either way, violence is just a way of life. And I mean, maybe it is exponentially more present in American society, but how do you draw that comparison? Like, how do you say that because we're America and our movies include violence and our music includes violence and all of this media includes violence, and that makes us more violent? Like, you can't really draw that comparison. And even if you do, now you're talking about the potential of oppressing First Amendment rights. And we already went through that in the 90s, if I believe, right?
Yeah, I mean, look at all the other rights that could be infringed upon. If you start doing certain things, like if someone is saying that they're hearing voices and they just say that casually, and now you're making a call for the police or whoever to show up and just take somebody away. I mean, nobody wants to live in a society like that.
Just taking off someone's word.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think it's the law enforcement's place to do that. They're not going to be able to help that individual that's having a mental health crisis. We need specific workers that answer those calls, that are prepared to do it. And law enforcement, unfortunately, they have enough on their plate. They can't handle stuff like that, and we shouldn't let them handle stuff like that.
It's scary. I mean, I watched a video of a gentleman. It happened here in Missouri. He was being pinned up against the wall where they were taking the picture. I don't know what that's called. I can't think of it off the top of my head. The mugshot. That's what I'm trying to think of. And they kept slamming him up against the wall. The guy's screaming out. He's like, I'm scared. I'm scared. And they just keep slamming him in the wall. And then another officer knees him in the groin. And okay, you know what? I believe that police overwhelmingly do good things, but things like this are bad. Like the cops shouldn't be handling that situation. It should be a mental health professional, or at least in present, so that they can say, look, this guy has issues. Stop violently addressing him and deal with him more in a softer manner.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, I think. Sorry, go ahead, Mike.
Oh no, I was just going to say that. You guys have mentioned the WTTA podcast, Walk Talk America. I have a podcast myself that I host with a mental health clinician named Jake Wiskerson. And we've recently just had a few episodes where we've invited different law enforcement agencies or programs, people from programs that do just that, right? They're ride-alongs, mental health clinicians that ride along on these calls. So we are working towards that. But once again, money has to come from somewhere. And when you have people shouting, defund the police, top of their lungs, like where do you think the money is going to come from if we don't start funding these programs or having these positions become available within departments?
Appreciate you coming on, man.
Anytime, fellas. And I'm sorry it was under this circumstance.
Hey, everyone. The Gun Shop Show is brought to you by Carthage Lock and Key. If you need anything to do with a lock or a key
to success.
Did they tell you to say that?
No, I just thought it sounded good.
They have a mobile service, so they can come to you and cut pretty much any kind of key
to success.
Or if you lock your keys in your
to
car.
Success.
I'm talking even security modern chip keys.
To success.
Trevor, could you just jingle the name of the business? Okay.
Yeah, I'll do it good this time.
So, with all of my properties and all of the needs I have, I trust
Carthage Lock and Key to success.
Our evenings, or often on weekends, are spending Friday and Saturday nights on the deck with our friends. Before, everybody would be crowded. We could barely sit together. We were walking on top of each other if everybody was on the deck. Now there's plenty of room for everyone to roam around and relax comfortably and have plenty of space.
Specifically, I know that every post they bury to a certain depth with full concrete. They use 6x6 posts, strapping and hurricane strapping on everything. It's how I feel a deck should be built if it's going to be built right.
Hey everybody, Eli here, and I'm really excited to tell you that the Gun Shop Show is brought to you by one of my favorite places on earth. Located here in my hometown of Carthage on the beautiful historic square, the Emporium on the square, and the Woodshed. It's a art gallery, an event center, a gift shop. They have art classes, and there's very unique Americana artwork from famous artists like Andy Thomas. They handle a lot of his originals. Framing just has this incredible old school vibe, and you can feel the history coming through. Have to check out the art gallery, but then as you work your way to the back, my favorite part, the Woodshed, had a lot of great meals in here. They've got burgers. I love their catfish. Excellent. Chicken and waffles even. It's incredible. And it's also a music venue, so we got to see my favorite band of all time, the Ben Miller Band. Ceiling was literally raining down. They were rocking so hard. But the best thing, owned by one of my favorite people on earth, that's Cherry Babcock. Check out the Emporium on the Square and the Woodshed.
This just in. Huge cave found beneath the heart of the city. Spelunkers shared tales of an underground cavern system in Carthage, Missouri. Locals report the entrance to be at 10th and Garrison.
Cave Gang Pizza. Stop in and enjoy wings, wood-fire pizza made with local ingredients, and our full bar. Bring the whole gang and uncover a legend.
The Gun Shop Show, brought to you by Little Old Ladies. They're little, and they're old. They're little old ladies.
Welcome back to the Gun Shop Show. We are joined by Rob Pink, as he's the Executive VP of 2AO. Rob, how you doing?
Doing pretty good, man. It is interesting times here in Colorado specifically, but obviously all across the country in terms of the gun debate. It's definitely hot.
Yeah, it's definitely a hot topic now, and unfortunately we're brought together by tragic circumstances, but I think it's a conversation we need to have, and I'm glad you're joining us.
Thanks. Yeah, it is. I had friends affected by this one, as unfortunately has happened several times in the past as well. Yeah. But in this case, it was really interesting. It's the second time that there's been an event where I had parents of kids who were in the vicinity of the event. In one case, the Parkland shooting, a parent that actually had kids hiding in the school. And this time, kids that two different sets of parents who have kids that live in Boulder, one of whom is attending college there. I'm very concerned and sort of like, what do I say? And do you know what's going on? And obviously, most of the time, I don't have any idea what's going on more than what's on the news. But it's important to be prepared. As people who take self-defense seriously, obviously as an educator, we want to be there for our friends. And sometimes what that means is bringing up these topics and these conversations when the iron's hot, so to speak, right? So if someone's out there right now wanting to know, well, gee, what would I tell my kids, or what should I tell my kids in case this happens next time? That information's out there, but you have to ask it today, not in the middle of an event. It's too late, right? That's not what preparation is. So personaleventsnetwork.com. There are plenty of resources out there that are free for people that are interested, and don't wait until there's a home invasion on the news to think about protecting your house from a home invasion, right? Or these active shooter situations.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to deal with the heavy stuff whenever times aren't heavy. Preparing for the heavy times, you want to be carefree, you want to enjoy life and go to the movies and have fun, but any of those moments can very much turn into a situation where being prepared pays off. The shooting in Boulder that occurred, if I remember correctly, there might have been a police officer on the scene or something, but in this instance, in the Asian, I'm sorry, not the Asian one, that's not good terminology, but the Atlanta shooting that occurred, these two shootings and even ones in recent past, the good guy with the gun is typically the cop that shows up after the event has occurred. We'd like to see more instances of people actually coming to the defense of fellow citizens with these firearms. How can we get more people prepared for these events, other than just saying more training?
Yeah, it's easy to say more training, right? Obviously, but even for gun owners, more training. But okay, so what kind of training? The reality is that many of these incidents of mass killings, spree killings, have been stopped by good guys that took action, good girls took action, right? Like good people who took action to stop the threat that weren't armed. This is incredibly important. It's an incredibly important point. This is not about gun or no gun, and it's not about a good guy with a gun. It's about a good guy willing to take action and prepared to take action, even if that action just means locking a door or grabbing three people and getting to run out, or the teacher that tells the students to leave the building as opposed to hide in the closet. Right? And then the middle ground is when you can't get away and when you can't barricade, how do you fight? And just having the mindset and will to fight is incredibly important. And then once you have that, once we accomplish that, then people would say, well, gee, maybe I could fight better if I had a gun. And that's where we get to more armed, responsible, trained people. We can't start with the gun. The gun can't be the focus of how do we solve the problem.
It certainly becomes the underscore of these moments, talking about guns and gun violence, rather than, moments where someone rose to the occasion. That gets talked about a lot less. It doesn't get the media attention that, this gentleman in Boulder does for committing this crime. The heroes don't get talked about nearly as much. Logan, you pointed out an article talking about from the fee article.
Yeah. Essentially, what that article was saying is that they estimate that about 400,000 violent crimes are prevented due to firearms, and you don't hear about any of those.
Mm-hmm.
You don't hear about a single one of those. But 400,000, that's a big number.
Yeah,
and that's speculative because using a firearm to stop a violent crime, exactly does that mean? Does that mean you fired it? No, not necessarily. Even brandishing it or even saying I have a firearm can't prevent those violent crimes.
Right. We cannot quantify the times where things didn't happen.
Yeah.
Only when they do happen, and then they become the poster or the banner for why we need more legislation.
It's interesting in these things, and I know this is off the topic of active shooter a little bit, but it's important to talk about these defensive gun uses and the way they get talked about. First and foremost, I'm all about remembering that this is taking action. That's what we're trying to inspire. It doesn't have to be the gun action. We're good people. We're going to talk about guns. It's a little disingenuous to say we don't hear about defensive gun uses, because I hear about them like literally almost every day, right? So in the gun community, we talk about them a lot. The guy who jumps over the counter at or jumps out of the booth at the Waffle House and tackles the bad guy with a gun and saves people, no one has any interest in talking about him. Think about that, right? The NRA is not going to talk about him because it was a good guy that didn't need a gun, right? The police aren't going to talk about him very much. They're going to talk about him once. They're going to give him a plaque, and then we're going to go quiet because that means they didn't save the day. The anti-gunners aren't going to say anything because they want the guy with the gun, the bad guy with the gun, to be this indomitable death force that nobody could stand up to. So we have to get rid of the gun because you can't stop a person with these crazy weapons of war. Right. So literally nobody wants to talk about the fact that the hall monitor with pepper spray stopped the school shooting in the Pacific Northwest. Nobody wants to talk about the guy at the Waffle House who tackled the gunman. Nobody wants to talk about even the gun community when the usher tackles the guy with the gun coming into the church and then goes to his car and gets a gun and holds him at gunpoint. They want to say gun owner stops crime. Well, yeah, the guy was a gun owner, but the gun had nothing to do with him stopping the crime. So we have to be really, really honest about this. There's a lot to talk about, and it all comes back to good people taking action and being mentally prepared to take action. And then, yeah, of course, here's another aspect of it. We can't quantify the number of times that somebody shows a gun when someone wants to commit a crime and they say, hey, I've got a gun, you better back off. And the guy runs away.
Yeah.
Shouldn't that person call the police? I believe 1,000% that person should call the police and say, somebody just tried to rob me, rape me, kill me, stab me, steal my truck with my kid in it. I showed my gun. They ran away. Here's what they looked like. Here was the time of day. This is where it happened. I'll prosecute if you can find them. Because that then, documents the defensive gun use, and it actually works to stopping crime. It encourages that store to put up lights, to put up cameras. It lets everybody in the community know there's a criminal out there. It gets the police to focus on that area, that crime, and that kind of a person, that description of that person. But let's remember, we don't want to do that half the time, right? We have to go read the comments. Read the comments under this post, right? Under this video, people are going to say, well, I'm not going to fill out paperwork when I don't have to. That's just going to get me put on a list.
Yeah, it's extra work.
It's crazy.
Right. And we work with US Law Shield, and we've watched some of their videos, and some of them, or at least one of them, would lead me to believe that just merely pulling a gun out could end you up in thousands of dollars of legal issues. So why would you want to do that? Like, you're afraid to mention this to the police for the fact that there's going to be repercussions against you, even though you did whatever you needed to do to protect yourself and those that you cared about, not put anyone in danger necessarily. That's not your intent.
But knowing that you're going to talk to the police means you better be sure you needed to pull that gun out. So again, it works back to education and responsibility.
Absolutely. Well, we're coming up on a break, Rob.
Yep.
We'll see you on the other side of the ads.
Stay with us. This is The Gun Shop Show.
People are always asking me, Eli, you seem to get the best deals on things. What is your secret?
Glory actions and estate sales.
Trevor, I appreciate you jingling, but I have to say the ad part first because people need to know about the company.
Oh, I thought you wanted me to do that.
And then also, it's covering up my face. So
I'll
just get a picture like from their Facebook page because that's the best place. And then just put it right up here where the Gun Shop Show logo is. Okay.
Yeah. All right. I'll do better this time.
And so let me finish the ad and then you can jingle. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So the best place to go is their Facebook page.
Oh, glory actions and estate sales.
You know what? Fine. I'll just move in between the graphics and finish telling people that the best place to find out when
Old Glory auctions and estate sales.
I think I got it that time, man.
Land is everything to me. When I was born, I was brought home to the family farm, was raised, learned work ethic there, learned appreciation and respect for life and the land itself, and it just became second nature. I had to be there all the time. Whenever I wasn't on the land, I was not happy. But I learned to understand the land, learned to respect it, learned family values. My wife and I have bought a farm besides the one we live on, and it has just been it's been a great investment, and it's been someplace that my son and I have shared the passion of hunting together, and it's just land has been everything in my life. It has kind of kept me focused and gave me a place to be. It's kind of kept me grounded.
Hey, you know what makes this, the Gun Shop Show, possible? It's people who believe in the show. And someone who has believed in the show from the very beginning is my good friend Chris Chapman, owner of Whitehead Farm Supply. Here's a message from Chris.
Guys, my name's Chris Chapman, owner of Whitehead Farm Supply, and I just want to take a few seconds here to let you know that we are going to be proud sponsors of the Gun Shop Show, and we appreciate everything that them guys are doing over there, and we just want to show them our support. Thank you.
So whether you have 2 chickens or 2,000 acres, Chris is your man. Give him a call. I guess that's pretty much the ad.
Whitehead Farm Supply.
Seriously?
Hurricane Harvey and Hurricane Irma devastated the Texas and Florida coast, causing unprecedented damage. During difficult times like these, we tend to experience the best out of people, as seen in countless heroic images of neighbor helping neighbor. However, these events can also bring out the worst out of people, seeking to take advantage when you are the most vulnerable. From the moment rain and wind started, calls have been pouring into our emergency attorney hotline from members who were forced to abandon guns in their homes overtaken by floodwaters, as well as members who have had to protect their property from looting. Our member John was one of those callers after he was forced to use his gun. Here is his story. During Harvey, John and his son were combating the water that continued to rise in their home. Suddenly, John noticed a truck driving up and down the street, creating wakes. Each time the truck passed, it pushed more water into John's home. As the truck was coming back around, John's son went out to confront the driver and ask him to stop. John didn't recognize the truck as being from the neighborhood and was worried the driver might be casing the street looking for an opportunity to loot empty houses. Responsibly and legally armed, he followed his son outside. As John walked toward the truck, the driver started accelerating straight at his son. John, fearing for his son's safety, fired a single shot in order to startle the driver and give his son time to move. When the police arrived, they intended to arrest John for deadly conduct. He called the Law Shield emergency hotline and was immediately advised by his independent program attorney. After the attorney talked to the police, they determined that a crime had not been committed because John acted in lawful defense of his son. Thank goodness John is a Law Shield member and knew exactly what to do when the police arrived. We were there for John when he needed us most, and we are here for you 24/7 with our attorney-answered emergency hotline.
Welcome back. We're talking to Rob Pincus of 2AO about the incident, the tragic incident in Boulder and the shooting that happened. Rob, if you could, because you're currently in Colorado, could you kind of break that down for us and let our viewers know what happened, essentially?
Yeah, it's been a few days. Obviously, these things are always developing. Stories and details could come out that contradict what we believe happened, or at least what I believe happened of right now. But as of right now, and we're talking about this, like I said, within a week of it happening, A gentleman went to King Soopers, a grocery store, one of which literally is about 200 yards from my apartment in that direction. But one in Boulder is about 35 minutes from here in the city of Boulder, but not if you're familiar with Boulder, it's not in the downtown area. It's not around the college. It's not around Pearl Street. It's not the touristy shopping district. It's more of a city suburb, sort of in the Denver direction from Boulder. Like I said, about 35 minutes from here. And if you picture us a regular kind of strip mall, restaurants, shops, grocery store as the anchor of that big parking lot, that's where this happened. And the gentleman started shooting in the parking lot. Depending on whose reports you listen to, he was either right in front of the doors or in between the cars, just at the beginning of the parking lot area across that kind of street area, in front of the store. So within 50 yards of the front doors, he starts shooting. Then he goes into the store and apparently goes towards the pharmacy area and begins shooting people inside the store as well. The first officer responded within 2 or 3 minutes. He was killed. So, this last segment, we were talking about the good guy with a gun. Here's the good guy with a gun, and the training and the taser and the flashy lights and all that. Killed by the gunman. The gunman shot 10 people and killed 10 people, which is very unusual. He was using a Ruger AR pistol. I've seen a lot of things about this argument of it was a handgun or it was this or it was that. For all practical purposes, it was an semi-automatic AR rifle because it was an AR pistol in the configuration of a rifle with a brace. So it's a short-barreled pistol, very much like this, but with a brace that was, as far as I know, it was not a foldable one like this. And he was shooting it as one would shoot a rifle. And that's probably a whole other 2 segments talking about braced pistols and why there's a distinction. Well, there really is only a distinction between the way our laws are written in the U.S. So he takes this AR, which he had purchased very recently, and he also had a handgun. It's unknown whether he also purchased the handgun recently. It's also unknown to me whether or not he fired the handgun at all. He proceeds to shoot 9 individuals plus 1 police officer who all either instantly died or died before they could be saved by medical attention. And he then at some point proceeds to strip off on his own, apparently, his tactical gear, whatever that is, his plate carrier, his magazine carrier, strip off the tactical gear and all of his clothing except for his shorts. And then he apparently surrenders to the police. Now, at some point, he gets shot through the leg. It is unclear right now whether he shot himself to appear to be a victim with the handgun, maybe with the right. I don't know. It's unclear if the police shot him. I'm unaware of that detail, but he does have what we know as a through and through injury to his leg. So in other words, it didn't break the bone, it didn't hit an artery, it just went through the muscle. And I think that's why some people are speculating he might have shot himself and was going to try to lay down on the ground and pretend he was a victim.
Blend in with the other folks.
So, but again, that's speculation, a pure maybe. And then the other maybe is that the police shot him when they arrived, because obviously in these events, a lot of police officers arrived, and he was taken into custody. He has a Syrian background. He has lived in the United States for an extended period of time. He finished high school here. He was involved in some acts of violence. He apparently was charged and pled guilty to an assault when he was in high school. There are varying reports that say that he was disturbed, he was easily angered, he had trouble with rage control. Some people are saying he was bullied in high school. He was an athlete, so he wasn't a recluse per se. He was an athlete on the high school wrestling team. He was known to people as someone who had a hair trigger, kind of a temper. And he was also apparently, people have said paranoid, although that's a technical term in mental health world. I don't believe he was diagnosed as such, but he would do things like say he thought his cell phone was hacked, or he would cover up his camera on his laptop, thinking people were watching him. But again, this is not a mental health diagnosis. So as far as true motive, I don't believe anything's been identified yet. And
Probably
that's kind of everything I know
on that. Yeah. Going to be some time before we unwrap all of that. I mean, it doesn't seem like these things go very quickly. They usually take time.
Well, sometimes we go years, right? Like one of the things I'm really, really curious about, because of the way the laws are incredibly convoluted here in Colorado, is what kind of magazines he had in the gun. And while that seems like probably just irrelevant minutia to someone outside of the gun community. As a gun rights advocate, I'm hearing a lot of people talk about weapons of war and high capacity magazines, and he killed 10 people. Well, you can kill 10 people with a 10-round magazine, which is what the ban is here in Denver. In greater Colorado, the ban is 15 rounds, but at the same time that you can have a 30-rounder if it was grandfathered in. And of course, it could have been an illegal magazine, right? So it could have been a magazine that he had, even though there are bans in Colorado. So we really don't know how many shots he fired. We don't know how many rounds he had. And yet, I hear people talking about how magazine bans would have saved people's lives. And I am unaware of any facts, nor have I seen any facts reported that someone could be using as a basis for that premise.
Right, right. And I mean, as an outsider myself with regards to Colorado, I wouldn't be able to tell you, I wouldn't be able to keep track of what laws or what. I mean, hearing you describe those sorts of things, it's confusing to me as a citizen that, I can't have this one here, but I can have that one there, so on and so forth. So it must
usually preemption. Yeah, usually state preemption makes it so that the individual municipalities can't have different laws. That's the way it's supposed to be here in Colorado. And of course, as has been widely reported, within a week of this incident, a judge actually ruled that the assault weapon ban in Boulder, which is the most restrictive of any of the municipalities inside of Colorado, could not be enforced. So the law still stands. I don't believe it would have affected this in one way or the other, because this guy was not a Boulder resident and he purchased whatever he purchased outside of Boulder. And of course, Boulder, as I said, is a neighbor of Denver. Denver has its own rules, and then Colorado has its own rules. And all three of those rules are different from the national rules around semi-automatics and buying a gun and everything else.
It's can't keep track of it all.
No, it's pretty confusing.
So I mean, it's safe to say at this point that, safe to assume at this point that any of those regulations did not deter this gentleman from committing a violent act.
Well, they didn't prevent it. Whether or not they made it harder for him, did he have to drive an extra 20 miles to get a 30-round magazine? Did he have to drive to South Dakota to get a 30-round magazine? We don't know. We also don't even know if he used a 30-round magazine. So some of those details, while they're irrelevant to the families and they're irrelevant to the in the fight moment for that police officer or anybody else responding, they are relevant to the discussion that's happening at the national level and the state level about gun rights and gun laws.
Yeah, I mean, the mentality is that if we restrict the amount of rounds that go into a magazine, that'll somehow save lives. And I think here we are discussing the prospect that that's not the case.
Yeah, even if it is the case, it still doesn't mean that a criminal isn't going to work around it.
Exactly.
If the case is he only used 10-round magazines, then there's nothing to be talked about, because then he used magazines that are already restricted. If he used a 30-round magazine, the issue is not, well, then make the laws tougher. The issue is stop trying to legislate around stuff instead of actions. Right?
Yeah. I mean, it's almost virtually impossible to eliminate and prevent all violent act, regardless of what mechanism that individual uses. But, we can't just keep inventing new laws every time someone breaks one so that we're going to somehow fix our problems as a violent, a culture that has a basis in violence or has some basis in violence or a passion.
And you got to remember, like me, a Florida resident who also has owned homes and currently I'm renting inside of Denver, inside of Colorado. I could cross a line on the imaginary map and become a felon without even really knowing it. And that's not fair either when we talk about rights and being responsible.
I agree with you on that.
No, but Rob, we're coming up on a break right now. Are you able to join us for another segment?
I can definitely do one more for sure.
Awesome. This is the Gun Shop Show.
Commercial idea for Netfishes. I walk into the commercial director, we'll call him's office. I say to him, "Hey, how's it going?" He replies, "Good. We got your commercial ready to go. Are you ready to listen?" "Yeah, but before I do, I have an idea I want to float by you." He says, "Okay," a bit sarcastically. And I say, "All right." And I clear my throat and I start singing this song, something similar. Net fishes, we're all really good friends, hanging out and stuff, and having memories to talk about when we were young. Net fishes. And I say the business name wrong, like fish nets. He replies, that's terrible. And you didn't even say the right business name at the end. It's your business. Then it cuts to fish snatches. Net fishes, where we can all be friends. End commercial.
The Gun Shop Show costs money to make, and the Gun Shop Show is brought to you by pecans and cheese. Not really. Actually, we didn't have any sponsors for this segment, and so I decided that I would take a snack break, and also I decided if you guys are tired of listening to me eat cheese and nuts, that you need to buy an ad. So from now on, if our ad sponsorships don't sell out, you're going to have to listen to me eat nuts and cheese. In order to sponsor the Gun Shop Show, send us an email at thegunshopshow@gmail.com.
Next week, chips.
Welcome back to the Gun Shop Show. We're talking to Rob Pincus from 2AO. Trevor, during the break, you wanted to ask Rob a question. What was that?
Well, less of a question, more of a fevered reaction, if you will, about the complexities, at least an outsider's complexity, understanding of the complexity of magazine laws, and how, passing some I say imaginary line. I know it's a legitimate line, but in my mind, it's imaginary because I look down and there's no line there. But, I cross over into it, and now I'm a criminal. Mm-hmm. So, Rob, can you explain a little more? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Colorado's a mess out here, what we call the Front Range, the greater Denver area. So it's important to note I'm not a Denver resident, right? So I'm a resident of Florida. My business is based in Florida. I've got a place in Florida. I've been down there since 2013, but I've had this presence in Colorado from back when I was running the Valhalla Training Center, going back to 2002. So I have been a Colorado resident. And like I said, I just sold a home not far from here less than a year ago. But I don't consider myself a resident for like what I buy and where I buy my guns in Florida. Now, I'm also an FFL, which means I'm a licensed dealer. I'm also a manufacturer, and I have what's called an SOT, so I can have suppressors under that license and all these things, fully automatic guns. So and I've been in law enforcement most of the last 30 years, at least as a reserve officer. So there are a lot of asterisks on all of this. But if I just put my hat on and pretend I'm like, none of those things exist, and I am a resident of Denver, I can have an AR and I can have a 10-round magazine, and I'm okay.
Okay.
In Boulder, right, which again is probably from the line on the map to the line on the map, I'm sure you can get from Denver into Boulder in less than 10 minutes from one corner or another, right? Mm-hmm. I can't even have an AR according to the current law, but the judge told Boulder they couldn't enforce it because it was against the Colorado laws, the laws of Colorado, the Constitution of Colorado, for a municipality to restrict rights that weren't restricted by the state.
Okay.
So that would essentially then mean if that judge felt that way about the Boulder law, then he must feel the same way about the Denver law, except the Denver law hasn't been challenged. Now, it is also important to note, to my knowledge, the Boulder law has never been enforced anyway. So I think this was the first case. I think this was the first test of the Boulder assault weapons ban, which went in a couple years ago. And the judge said, no, you can't do this.
Do you know sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, Rob, but do you know what the nature of that law, like how that law came into effect and when it came into effect? Is it as a result of the Aurora shooting?
No, the founders of Moms Demand Action lives over there. So it's a very liberal, quote unquote, city with a lot of left politics. And it was just local politics and local pressure on friends of friends in the government there that led to that law passing in Boulder.
Gotcha.
Again, probably against state law. And now it's been tested. And so this was a win, right? So like last week, people were saying, hey, this is great for Colorado gun owners, friends of mine. They're like, okay, cool. So now let's go to Colorado in general instead of these state laws. Colorado in general has a 15 round magazine limit, but but magazines were grandfathered in. So I don't know if you remember, but Magpul, they're based here in Colorado, they made a huge deal about like freedom magazines. And they went into like shifts overtime to get as many magazines built as possible and into the hands of citizens of Colorado, people who are actually residents of Colorado before the ban went into effect, 2014, 2015, I think it was 15. So that ban only applied to new magazines or newly imported magazines that weren't in your possession prior to that date. So as someone who has always, at the very least, had a bunch of stuff here, whether it was because of the agencies I worked with or good friends of mine and all the training I would come back and do, I've had personal belongings in Colorado since 2002. So I have like this magazine here. This magazine has been in my possession in Colorado for who knows how long, a decade, if not two, at this point, almost 2 decades. So this may have come with me when I moved from Tennessee, so I'm not sure when the metal magazines got here, but I have a bunch of 30 round AR magazines in Colorado that existed prior to the ban, which is fine, even if I'm a Colorado resident, but wouldn't be fine if I was a Denver resident. And here's the thing, in Denver, you can have the AR, but you can't have the AR and the magazine that's greater than 10 rounds. Now, the icing on the cake for all this is just about every sheriff in Colorado has said they won't enforce the magazine capacity ban. And you can go into just about any gun shop and find the spring, floor plate, and follower in one package and the magazine body itself in another package sold separately as repair parts. And I've watched people in gun range or in gun shops that have gun ranges buy both things, put them together, and then go to the range and shoot. Nobody's stopping them because nobody's enforcing these laws, which then leads to a whole nother problem because most of the gun owners in Colorado aren't trying to fight the laws and get them overturned because nobody's enforcing them anyway, because it's all theater. It's all feel-good stuff for the people that want gun control at the top of the government. When they have power, they throw these things in, and then the people are like, that's ridiculous. And if the law enforcement says, well, we're not going to bother, then people get complacent and the laws stay on the books. And that's really unfortunate because now it's a matter of contention. If these laws existed more strictly, did the laws affect what happened in Boulder? Should the laws have been enforced more strictly? All of these questions are being asked over laws that never should have existed in the first place. Right. Yeah. And I mean, who's to say that at some point an administration comes in and decides to buckle down on those laws, and when they've become complacent and people feel like they're free to do things, and now they're being reined in by their local law enforcement because they broke those laws. Mm-hmm. And how would you even enforce these laws if you're allowing 30-round magazines to be grandfathered in? Did they go and take a poll on how many mags you had before this and how many mags you have now? Like, how would you enforce it? Well, so here's the thing, and this is what I try to tell people. Like so, for example, remember the company HexMag? I don't even know if they're still around. They joined up with Century Oils, and I'm not even sure if they're called HexMag anymore. But I think they are because. Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I got you. Okay, so either way, so HexMag or Lancer magazines with the metal. There's magazines out there now that did the Magpul 21-round Glock magazines. There are magazines that exist today that did not exist before the date when this law went into effect. Gotcha. So that would be one way it can be enforced. If you're driving around, you get pulled over for speeding, and the cop is gun savvy, and he sees a hex mag sitting on your passenger seat, you hand him a Colorado driver's license. Then now the elements of the crime are there, right? Where did you get that? Whose is that? Why do you have it? But here's the problem. So like, for example, I think it was a nationals for IDPA. The nationals for one of the gun competitions was held outside of Colorado Springs last year, I think, maybe 2 years ago. And the sheriff actually wrote a letter to the people who were organizing it and said, yeah, we're not going to enforce the magazine ban on the people coming into town. Now, that's fine because I don't even think the people coming into town are subject to it because they're not Colorado residents and they're coming in for the competition. I mean, that exemption even exists in California. If you're doing a competition in California, you can bring, as far as I know, you can bring your high capacity mags in and stuff like that. I think it's still the way it was in California. So, and that's part of FOPA, right? If you're driving from Nevada to New Hampshire and you're driving through Colorado, you can't get arrested for transporting the magazines through Colorado. The question is, so now you're out on the range and one of your magazines breaks in the middle of this competition. You borrow a PMag 21 rounder, 20 rounder for your Glock. You shoot it. It gets back in your range bag. The guy goes back to Nevada, wherever he's from. You've got this magazine that you don't even remember is in the bottom of your bag, and you get pulled over for speeding. Something happens, and now you're charged in the county where the sheriff said he wouldn't enforce it by the state trooper that pulled you over because he didn't say he wasn't going to enforce it. And as you said, maybe the new governor is telling the state troopers to start enforcing the magazine ban. So we really need to be way more proactive, pay way more attention. And even you guys, none of this affects you. Right? Or your customers, you guys are. But I think it's important that people understand that just because the law isn't affecting you today doesn't mean the law isn't. Right.
And the tides can shift in our state of Missouri, even though we're very conservative here. But sorry, I lost track of what I was going to say there. But anyway, your example of the gentleman with the, what'd you say, a 20 round Glock mag coming back home and getting pulled over by the highway patrolman is highly more likely to happen than we stop someone who with bad intention from acting as a result of those
because
laws.
that guy doesn't care. The guy who's going to kill people at the grocery store, I don't think he's sweating over whether this magazine or this magazine is the one that he can show on podcast, right? Theoretically, right? Some detective in Denver that really wants to enforce this law could say, "Oh, I'll test his theory about not being a Colorado resident. I'll test his theory about that magazine existing. He can't prove he had it in Colorado before the date. Let's play this out in court." And there could be a knock at my door tomorrow. I doubt it, but that's I'm willing to take at that level, right?
Right. Yeah. Which, I mean, gosh, even thinking about stuff like that gets me scared. Someone just points a finger at you and now you've got thousands of dollars in legal fees thrown at you.
Just pretty much instantly.
Yeah. Well, Rob, we have about a minute left in this segment. Is there anything can you let folks know where they can find you, where they can follow you?
Yeah.
I'm going to go back to what I said in the first segment I did with you guys. If you are talking about active shooter stuff, you're talking about spree killing stuff with your friends, family, your neighbors, your coworkers, because unfortunately, when these events happen, people start to think about it more than they do on the average day. PersonalDefenseNetwork.com. There's a lot of free resources there. Also, the School Attacker Response Course, STARK. Great resource for kids, administrators, teachers, any of the faculty, any of the employees at schools. And you can really apply it to banks, hospitals, whatever. That's the best, most important place to go. Get the information, get the training, be prepared, and then 2AO.org for the gun rights and gun law, gun advocacy stuff.
Robert, I appreciate you joining us. This has been the Gun Shop Show.